Oi, oi, I am back with some more horsey talking, tipping, selectioning, my personal views on racing. So, with that in mind, I'm going to sort of mash up the way that I normally do these videos. So I have been doing them much more now, just I'm telling you what I fancy or what I'm going to be betting on. Whereas I feel like I still want to talk about some of the races in a bit more depth because I know you guys sort of like to hear that, or at least I think some of you do. I'm going to chapter it up at the bottom so you can skip through race by race, and I will tell you what I will be betting in there to keep it fairly concise. So if you do want to just skim through and see what I fancy, then you can do so. And if you want to listen to me waffle, then you can equally do so too. Now, it is Sandown on Saturday, good ground. People have been slating, as they always do throughout the season, that it's too much national hunt racing, there's not enough runners in these fields. Well, I disagree. I don't think there's any horses that you'd expect or you'd want to run on this particular ground at this track at this time of year in these particular races. So stick it up your arse. Just enjoy the fact that there is some decent racing on, and there is some decent racing on. I've gone through every single race and I've got some bets lined up. Staking is my mindset at the moment of how I'm going to play these. I'm going to wait till like bang on the day, see how things are going, but there's a couple that I want to sort of smash up, one in particular. And of course, we've got Punchestown next week, Tuesday through to Saturday. So we've got 5 days of decent racing. Now, I know everyone's, again, slating the thought of a 5-day Cheltenham Festival, and I get it. It can make a bit of a difference, can't it? But I don't know, they could chuck some more competitive handicaps in there, couldn't they? And then you don't have to water down those grade ones as much as people think. Punchestown do an excellent example of that. They could probably add some more grade one different distance races at Punchestown, but they don't. But anywho, it's a discussion for another day. But I will be previewing Punchestown. I'll be telling you my bets for each day. There are 3 or 4 bets, and from looking at early entries as well, the horses are in, that I think I'm gonna have a lump on at Punchestown. And I feel fairly confident, do all right at that meeting every single year. Better to be select there than compared to other meetings, but I'm gonna smash up Punchestown. So I'll let you guys know what I'm doing there. I may try and do something else where you get to see my bets each day, like some sort of video for that, but I don't know how I'm going to get that to work, so maybe that's something for next season. Anyway, as always, thank you for your support. Please like the video, comment below with your fancies or thoughts in there as well. That helps, that pushes the YouTube algorithm out there to suggest that other racing people may be interested, and obviously it is a community thing, plus I'm a subscriber whore and so please subscribe because it does you no harm and it does me a favour. Shall we crack on with Sandown before the video goes on for too long? So I'm going to stick these on. Not so good for the viewer experience with the old reflections, but it means I can actually read. The first race, the 2 mile Novices Championship Final Handicap Hurdle. It is a race that in the past I've looked beyond the obvious and it's come back to bite me. This year I've gone into a lot of the runners. I haven't gone all the way down the bottom of the field in real depth because when I've skimmed through them and even just known from how they've run this season, I don't see something at a massive price winning, but it does look a competitive enough race that I wouldn't be confident in a selection in it. So with that in mind, if you're fancying the race, then more luck to you. The ones that sort of jumped up to me, and it'll be fairly obvious because they're priced up accordingly in the market, is Dr. Panucci's was the first one up in my mind. Now, the 4-year-olds do get a weight for age allowance, so their official ratings and then the fact that they're running off a lower weight will lure people in and it will look attractive. And sometimes it is the case that it is genuinely as attractive as it should be. So Dr. Panucci's essentially gets £8, runs off of 128 is the equivalent of the mark. Now, I like this horse. I think he's run at Cheltenham in the Triumph was pretty good considering he's not going to be beaten the likes of a Vauban. 12 lengths was the official distance he was behind them. So again, remember the fact that he's officially running off of 128. That would put Vauban in the 140s, but again, put the £8 on for Vauban. You got to say Vauban's comfortably a high 140s horse, if not 150s. So I think even just literally taking the distance there, even though they wouldn't have been trying all the way to the line, I don't think, it's a pretty good run at Cheltenham. His 2 runs beforehand were wide margin wins. Now, Restitution, the one that he beat at the beginning of the season at Ascot for Alan King, had run since, but it ran poor. It won after, then it ran in a handicap hurdle again and ran poor, and it was a worse class of handicap hurdle. He was odds on favourite, like he should have won. They just said that he was never travelling, so you'd line through that, but I still think the form looks pretty good. And then the second race where he won, where he beat Colin Tizard, could talk about it. You can read these in different ways. Now, he got weight from this horse because of the fact that he's a 4-year-old. In this handicap terms and all those sort of things, he would still be getting that weight. Now, could talk about it, is rated 123 officially, but Dr. Panucci's beaten by 9 lengths. So again, the 9 lengths to the £5 difference I think is all right. Like, I think this horse's number looks okay to me. I haven't historically looked at what the novices are like in this race for 4-year-olds running there. There's quite a few that are running this year round, but I think Dr. Panousis looks to have a proper chance. He's the sort of horse as well, I suspect, where there'll be extra places on offer. I've been doing it more recently than ever, but I like to smash up some horses in the place market. Dr. Panousis is one of those that I really like the look of. But to keep going through some of the ones towards the head of the market. Now, Nappers Hill's a horse that I expect at the start of the season to be a very good novice. He's not turned out to be that way, but I still think 134 is not beyond him. He only ran a week ago. Maybe that was a confidence booster. Maybe it was just a prep run for this. It was a race where he was never really asked to do anything, and it was just an okay performance, really, if you trust it as a warm-up for this. Obviously, he had that run behind John Bonnet Ascot. He does seem to be a horse that really does like good ground, this Nappers Hill, so maybe that will help even more. I just think his form suggests that 134 is doable, but he is the 7-2 favourite, and I've already made a bit of a case for a horse against him, so I don't really know if there's any juice in him. Headlaw for John Joe O'Neill Jr. and John Joe O'Neill Sr. has been impressive in his wins. Won handicap hurdles the last twice. He's up £17 from those handicap wins. They both did come on good ground. I'm not so convinced that this horse is as well in as some of the others that might be in here. I think he's got a chance, but he probably wouldn't be for me in terms of punting anyway. And WizKid, I get a bit... not confused, that's the wrong way, but I get a bit conflicted with these syndicate horses about when they're running at meetings, whether the quick turnaround after a previous run is because they fancy him and they feel that they've left the race behind, like we saw with Gordon Elliott with Coach Carter, ran him 2 days on the spin at Perth, won the second time round, or whether it's the fact that it's a syndicate and it's a big race meeting and they want to have a runner. By the by, his run at Aintree was pretty good. He was fourth, only 2.5 lengths or 2 3/4 lengths, beaten in the conditional jockeys hurdle race. And like, this is no dig at the jockey, but I just think if a proper jockey was on board him, he would have won. And there will be a proper jockey on board him. It will be Sam Twiston-Davies. He does pretty well when he rides for Dr. Richard Newland anyway. This horse did run at the start of the season at Sandown, running behind Constitution Hill. Now, he's well beaten by Constitution Hill, and it was on slow ground. But... again, I know the syndicate, you're chucking him in there. I feel like it was a thought process towards coming back towards this. Now, he was backed into favourite at Aintree, so I suspect that was probably a day when they fancied him too. But I think he's got a chance. So that's just the top 4 in the betting, and I've made, I think, a bit of a case for each of them. It doesn't look a race to be getting confidently involved in, so that's sort of where I'm at with it. I may look at backing a couple in a place market, especially if there's 4 places on Betfair. We'll see with like the likes of Nappers Hill, Dr. Panousis, WizKid, to see what sort of prices they are. But I might be tempted to play a couple in the place market, but wouldn't be like an overly confident, let's just smash them up. But I do think they'll all run pretty well. Then we've got the Oaksey Chase, which is over 2 miles, 6.5 furlongs. So grade 2, I think the way that this race is changing complexity from the entries to the final declarations, markets have moved about all over the shop. George, that we've had on here a few times, talk about horses. I'm pretty sure he put Mr. Fisher up at 6-1 on the anti-post column. Talk about the fact that he was a target, ran well in the race last year, etc., etc. I think Sean Bowen was due to ride because Nico de Boinville was up on Pistol Whipped, but Pistol Whip doesn't run, so Mr. Fisher is now ridden by Nico de Boinville, and the long way around that is he's now a 13-8 fav, and I think rightly so. He is giving away £6 to St Calvados, who I'd said was too big a price at Aintree, and I backed him, but I said he was too big a price at 14, 16. He went off at 10s, barely moved, did it, but he's a bleeder. I know they fancied him a few times. I don't know, he annoys me. But he annoys me so much that maybe he could go and win it. The thing is, he ran here behind, I think it was he ran behind Alta in Tingle Creek, and he was third, and people were talking about it as a mugging each way bet. There was 4 runners in the race, and he just picked up third on the line. So I don't particularly think this track suits him. He used to go off like a headless chicken out in front as well, didn't he? And I just don't know. Like I think he's got a run in him, but I'm sort of done with St Calvados now. Nutswell was really good. Air for the Scottish national meeting. Kelso, when he won, and that was over 2 miles, 7.5. So distance and stuff we know. Had another run after that. He is 11-year-old, and I think it's going to catch up with him. Earn River fell at Aintree, and lots of people, good judges, told me that his jumping doesn't really stand up, and that's what came to fruition at Aintree. Looks like a nice horse. Does need to progress probably £10 to a stone to actually be in a chance of winning this, but you couldn't completely rule him out. But if we come all the way back to Mr. Fisher, was second in this race last year behind Frodon. That was off of levels. This time he's got to give that £6 to Earn River and the St. Calvados, who I would probably say are the two biggest dangers in the race. He didn't win that day. He got beat in the neck. He didn't really stay towards the end, and he was a bit keen in the race as well. So all of these things are, do I want to be backing him at 13-8? Also, from in terms of a winning perspective, I think 2 miles, 4.5 is the furthest that he's won over. So again, he was close enough in this race last year that you wouldn't be too worried about the trip. But then, if he makes mistakes or he goes a little bit too keen, I don't think he's got enough stamina and reserve to overcome that. So, I think he's the right favourite, but I couldn't be steaming into him. Is the long and the short of it. He is less complicated than other horses in the race, though, I would say. And he definitely comes in with a favourite's chance. Then we'll move on to the Celebration Chase. This is one where I'm going to have a decent bet on this. Timing wise, I don't feel rushed or pressured to get the money on just yet. I don't think he's going to be completely smashed up, but we'll see. I'm going to be having a good bet on Grenadine. I think again, when you look at the race, there's a few like Sky Pirate, Rouge Vif just aren't up to this standard. So Royal is a 10-year-old now. His best runs are behind him. He jumps markedly left now, and it just doesn't suit him at Sandown. He did win the Henry VIII Novices Chase here back in 2017, so he's got that course and distance win to his name, but I think it's irrelevant now. 5 years on, he's a different running horse. I was pretty disappointed with him in the Game Spirit at Newbury as well, truth be told, and I think he's past his best. Nube Negra hasn't won round here. Nube Negra, his good run at the beginning of the season, beating Politolog, I don't think is anything. I don't think Politolog is any sort of horse this season, hence the retirement, things like that. Whereas Grenadine beat Altior in this race last year. Grenadine won the Tingle Creek this season. Yes, he went over to Dublin Racing Festival when he was beaten out of sight, but the horses were running poor and no one expected him to run overly well over there. I know market-wise he was a 5-1 poke, but all the judges knew that he was going to be beaten out of sight. The run at Kempton, where Shishkin was in there, pretty good to be fair, considering it was only 3 weeks after the Tingle Creek. I liked that effort. I think those bits of form, those two alone, are really, really good form for this season. And the fact that you chuck in there that he beat Altior in this race last year. He loves good ground. He's 2 from 2 in it. He has been a non-runner on it once, but he's 2 from 2 on good ground. Decent round Sandown as well. I can't believe we're getting 13-8. I mean, I can because I see the Nube Negra bit in there, but like he's just given us a price in here. I feel very similarly about this as I did with Chacon Poursoir and Allaho at Punchestown last season, where Chacon Poursoir was the best 2-miler in my eyes in training last year. I feel like he was like worthy of being an odds-on poke, but Allaho, because of how good he was at Cheltenham, sort of brought that market forward and gave us that bit of extra price in there. And I feel similar with this with Grenadine. Like, I don't think many people would argue Grenadine should be Fav, and I think he should be, and I think he probably will go off Fav. I think with that as well, if you start to move the prices round, this is when you end up betting as a value punter more to do with the price. So say with the Allaho Chacon Poursoir, if Chacon Poursoir had have been the 4-7 that I would have made him, and then Allaho's like a 5-2 poke, you'd be looking at backing Allaho. But just on a price-driven scenario, even though I would still have thought that Chacon Poursoir would have won. Now, I wouldn't have backed Allaho. I'm just saying how price is getting your head. So what I'm saying here is, if Grenadine was moved into like an even money poke and Nube Negra goes out to 9-4, 5-2, then as much as I've just crabbed Nube Negra, your mind starts to look at Nube Negra and think he's a viable option at the price. But that isn't the way that we are. Grenadine at 13-8 is a stonking bet. So I'm going to have a reasonable chunk on him. I get that the horse isn't the most necessarily consistent. I know things can go in and out. I know it's Harry Cobden back on board instead of Bryony Frost. But factoring all those things into price and my stake, I'm still going to have a couple of under on him, I think. And spare change, maybe. Then we've got the 332, the Sandown Bet365 Gold Cup Handicap Chase. How easy is this race? The winner's in it. Won it last year, pound lower. Lost it in the steward's room. And Rillo's a horse that guys that have followed me through Cheltenham, I put him up years ago as a horse to follow. He is a bit of a rogue. I like that in him. He ran really well in the Hennessy this year, apart from falling. And I say ran really well. There was so far left in the race, no one had a clue how he was going to go or how he was going to finish. But ever the optimist in me and liking the horse, I would suggest that he would have gone close. Then he runs at Cheltenham very, very quickly after that. The December meeting was smashed into favourite. I messaged George, again, referenced him a couple of times, but I messaged him and said, how is anyone smashing up a horse that's just A, running a Hennessy, and B, just falling in a Hennessy? Like, regardless of what it's done, it's going to take it out of you. So I couldn't see it. He made some mistakes. He didn't run great. And I do also think that at Cheltenham wouldn't be a course that's going to particularly suit. When you've got these bit of roguey horses, sometimes Cheltenham's a track for jumping and all those sort of things. Like, you're too far out your comfort zone. And that was a bit of a strange race as well because Commodore just went off miles clear. He ran at Kempton a couple of months ago and I thought he ran pretty well. That was first time cheap pieces. Ran well enough, I think. Mark's come down a couple of pounds from that. But we know that he won this race last year, all but losing it in the steward's room. I think that he's got every chance of doing the same again, except this time not losing it in the steward's room. So I'll be fairly confident he'll be bang there. Like I say, maybe a tiny bit of a rogue of a horse. Not a tiny bit. He definitely is a rogue of a horse. But I like him. His best form's on good ground as well. Like, he's borderline have a chunk on if you could trust him. So the way I'll play Enrillo is I will be backing him to win. And again, it's a confidence thing. I know that he's a bit of a rogue of a horse. I know he lost it in the steward's room, but would have been paid first past the boat if you'd have bet with a actual bookmaker rather than the exchanges. And I know there's other horses that have been running well and potentially there's some fly in the ointments in there, but there are every year in this race. But I think Enrillo's good. So at 7-2, I'm happy to back him. My tactic will be, I'm probably going to work out what sort of stake I want to have on there. So it varies to what people do and it varies to how I play as well. I'm still sort of finding my niche for bigger bets going in for next season. But for conversation's sake, if I was going to tie up 200 quid on Grenadine, that would be like a strongish bet. I might end up having more, but I think 200 quid, let's just say that's what I'm having. When I look at Enrillo as a chance, I get that there's a few more risks attached to him, but I do fancy him. So he would maybe be more something like I'd have £25 win and then £75 in the place market, because you'll be getting over even money for him in the place market. You're going to get, well, we've got 15 runners, so you're only going to get 3 places on the exchange, but you can bet in the 4 places market that will be up on there, and I'll be fairly confident that he's going to be there or thereabouts. And if he just gets done, he just gets done. But again, from a betting perspective, although you're throwing away that win money if you're backing each way, I'd be far more confident that he's going to be there or thereabouts than I would be that he's actually going to go and get the job done. I do think he'll get the job done. So that's the way that I'll be looking at playing it. And then it is price dependent on that place perspective. Like, if the price isn't enough for me to do it, then I would just stick with the lower stakes. So rather than saying, I've got £100 here, I want to tie up in Enrillo, if I can't get the price that I want on him to place, which would probably be just slightly over even money, I'd leave the place aspect. I'd just stick with the smaller bet on him to win, and I'd just take my medicine with it, rather than looking at like a point system and saying, oh, I want to have 50 quid because I fancy him a bit more. Like I said, I'm trying to tie money up in different ways. That's just the way that I'm trying to do things at the moment. And again, with a horse like this that is a bit roguey, has already fallen this season, has pulled up, has made mistakes, I don't really want to be risking a chunk of cash in the win aspect of it, even though I'm fairly confident it'll run well, if that makes sense. So I'm looking for a bit of value somewhere else. Horses for courses, and each to your own with punting. Anyway, 407, the Bet365 Select Hurdle. Obviously, people were expecting Goshen to come here. I would have been tempted to smash him, but he's not coming, so that's good. However, I do like Indefatigable. Now, she's a mare that I've liked from the beginning. We backed Litigate, the full sister, or full brother to Indefatigable, who I knew needed good ground. I talked about this so much with that horse, that Indefatigable needs good ground, but because of the class that she is, you're not going to not run her in grade 2s and grade 1s or grade 3s when they're a bit softer when she's favourite. So they've run her sometimes when probably they shouldn't have run her. But that Litigate, we said about it, won 16-1, didn't it? First time up in a bumper. They held on to it for a little while, a few months, so got good ground. Anyway, kind of half proves my point. On adjusted ratings, so with weight concessions and official ratings, she's banged down the bottom of the pile. So she's actually got a couple of pounds to find with Fuse or Raffles. In theory, she's ahead of McFabulous by a couple of pounds, so that's okay. And then with Scaramanga, she's got £5 or £6 to find. But I don't think Scaramanga's mark is really as true as it looks. I'm happy to be proven wrong on that one. But I think Indefatigable's solid. I think that the whole field are fairly closely matched. That's why the prices as they are. I'd have her favourite in this race personally. She's a 3-1 poke at the time that I'm recording this, and I can't imagine too many people want to get smashed into her because she's been a bit in and out this season with her form. But she was second at this meeting last year in this race. She has been beaten short price favourite round here before. But that's when they ran her, again, this is a Class 1 race, listed mare's hurdle on soft ground. She did not want to be running on soft ground. It was one of those seasons where it was just bad ground over and over again. And you either don't run them or you just get it into them. Good ground. The last time she ran in that was at this meeting last year. Got beaten half a length. I mean, I thought it was a pretty good effort. I thought that she was going to win and she didn't. Maybe she's that sort of horse that she's always going to run a good race. Maybe not always a winning one, but this season I think she's run quite well. The flat spin I was pretty impressed with. Then she won the Grade 2, beating Prashima. She was pretty poor at Newbury after that, and I can't really make an excuse for it. Then at Cheltenham I fancied her there. She was given £5 to Martello Sky. She got beaten a neck. I was fuming because I backed her that day, but hey ho, I thought she ran well. Then at Warwick, unexcusably poor. Don't know what it was, flu jabs or whatever it was. Like I don't know why she was so bad that day, but she was shit. And then they ran at Cheltenham. She fell, long way out, but I think she was going nicely. So I think she's got a bit of a maybe inconsistent form to her now, which is obviously not the most positive thing to be saying about a horse going into a race. But I think she's nice. McFabulous, if Harry Cobden was riding on that, like stable wise, would have given me more confidence. But he got it wrong. He raced St Calvados, didn't he, when Lorcan sat on Hitman? So it's not always the case that the stable jockey bookings put in there. The fact that he's given away some weight probably is enough to urge it across. But Indefatigable on this ground, really, really strong fancy for me. And I say a really strong fancy. Like in the context of this race, so again, she'd be a smaller one, so she would probably be trying to think how I play it. Like I wouldn't be surprised if she gets beat, but I do think that she's going to be there or thereabouts, and I think she could win this. I also wouldn't be surprised if she goes and dots up by 5 or 6 lengths. So she's the sort of one, again, coming off the back of a fall this season, and the fact that she's been a little bit patchy, wouldn't want to get too overly excited, but I don't know. In the scheme of me maybe having a couple of £100 on Grenadine, I'll probably be looking at having 50 on Indefatigable. I think the 3-to-1's good. So I might maybe tiny bit more than that. But in terms of the level of confidence there, Grenadine's the big bet of the day. And then I'm not looking to just level stake it across everything and try and claw the money back. When I have these bigger fancies, I'm not just going to up everything else just to sort of cover my losses, if that makes sense. But it's a long game, innit? We're doing it for the season. Then we've got the Novices Handicap Chase, the 440, 2 mile 4. Beakstown finally got his head in front. Could you possibly trust the horse to go back to back? I don't think you can. Flicko Voyou unseated in that race. I like Flicko Voyou. I think nice horse. I couldn't be betting in this race, but if I was betting in it, it would be a token bet on Flicko Voyou. Like I think he's better than the 135. I think pricey wise, that's the one I'd be lured into. So can't really go into depth in that one, but you'll be pleased to hear that because the video's already 20 plus minutes in. Handicap hurdle, 2 mile 4 at the end, 50 balls in there. They've got a claimer on for a few pounds. I can understand that, given the fact that this horse actually won a decent handicap hurdle the last day with the same guy on, and he's only £3 higher. He won that by 4.5 lengths. Like the boxes are ticked for him to go again, but that's why he's 9-2 favourite in there. Call Me Lord, got to give weight away, but was an absolute monster around here back in the days when we used to say he could only go right-handed. Samarive, weirdly in my head, it's just always a horse that I see the Nichols Yard back in, and it's a horse that I really like. Now, he's stepping up in trip for the first time, which I think is really interesting. He is only a 5-year-old, but this horse, I think, has been crying out for the step up in trip from the very first time that he ran. He won a novice hurdle, and he absolutely dotted up. And it's difficult in those races to say, well, why do you think he needs to step up in trip? But he just stayed and stayed and stayed, and all his best work was at the end of the race, which I think maybe inflated how good he might have looked in terms of a handicap mark, but he was favourite after that and beaten. He then won the listed handicap hurdle at this track off of 130, and he stayed on again. Now, he was a bit keen, so maybe they wanted to keep him at 2 miles just to see him settle. Ran at Sandown last month in the Imperial Cup, and again, like little bits of money about for him, but not loads. Just was never really put in the race or given a hard time about it. It's a bit more maybe about settling him, which I think he settled okay. So this 2 mile 4, the settling's the only tiny concern, but he's a 9-1 poke. He will be carrying some of my cash in the last. So I get that there's other horses in there that have got bits of chances, but Samarive is just one of those horses, I think, not necessarily just going to back him blind for the sake of it, but while they're doing things differently and while they're making a bit of a case for him, I backed him the last day when he was, I think I got 20 odds on the machine. I'll back him for this. He's 10-1 or 9-1 best price at the moment. Probably be double figures Well, will be. Maybe even get bigger than that on the machine. And again, I probably will have a few on the place market. Maybe the sort of horse that I could look to try and trade and run in, although the last one he was never put into it. But yeah, I think Saint Marie will carry some cash. Going to be much better over a longer trip, and typical Nichols improver as they keep going. So that wraps up Saturday's views. As I say, like, comment and stuff below helps me. Subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll be back with Punchestown. And I've got some good bets lined up there as well, but I'll give you, again, some concise stuff. The races that I've got an opinion in, I'll tell you the truth. Haven't got an opinion in there, I won't just say it for the sake of it. So again, thank you for your support. Be lucky, and I will see you soon.